Newspapers and what's making headlines at this stage. And we start with The Citizen. Let me just grab my copy here to see what's the lead there. The Citizen leading this morning with 1 in 5 of us is an addict. Now, this is quite a scary story. It says, top of the list of substances South Africans abuse are alcohol, dagga, and painkillers, with boozing alone costing the country 38 billion rand annually, according to this report. And alcohol legally available to everybody over the age of 18, and it affects the brain in a similar way that some of these other drugs do as well. And then dagga, marijuana, and methamphetamines, cocaine, and these are some of the top drugs that South Africans are said to be addicted to. So alcohol, painkillers, dagga. That is what we are dealing with. And then Marikana massacre remembered, also covered. And in the business section, a storm brewing in the insurance sector. This as extreme weather rises and damages claims are following suit. Something that Azwi was talking about last week regarding climate change and the weather patterns that we are currently seeing. So that's The Citizen. Moving on, the Sowetan, their lead story this morning, things fall apart in VBS. And the towns, most of them who have invested in VBS, they are scrambling to get down to service delivery with hundreds of millions frozen in the bank. The municipalities are finding it hard to deliver those basic services. And it goes on to list in the Northwest Province, for example, how much was invested, and the SCOPA in that province talking about an amount in excess of 300 million that was meant for service delivery invested in VBS Bank that is now frozen one way or another. And it breaks it down. Dr. Ruth Mumpati district, they invested 150 million rand, Madibeng 50 million rand, Mahikeng 100 million, and Muretele 50 million. And that's just to name a few. So that's the lead story in Soweto this morning. Also, vigilantes declare war on gangsters. And this story on page 2 of the Sowetan, 2 dead as community hunts down gangsters. And it also looks at the human side of the story, where they spoke to a family where this one of the vigilantes was killed, and the parents actually watched this happen. So that's what the Sowetan is going with this morning. And then moving along, Business Day. Eskom is what they are leading with, and Koko's Eskom coal tests shaky, according to a report that was commissioned by Treasury. Now, the contract was to supply Eskom's Majuba power station from the Gupta-owned Brakfontein colliery, and it goes on to say that coal samples that enabled the Gupta family to pocket more than R1 billion could have been switched during a lab test that was ordered by former Eskom acting CEO Matsela Koko, and he of course disputes this. Also on that front page of the Business Day, Tiger Brands, no end in sight to Tiger Brands' bad year. And a tough year, remember, after that listeria outbreak that killed over 180 people, and it's getting worse for Tiger Brands, it seems. The company's share price has collapsed to as much as 10% on Thursday, and shedding 6.2 billion rand in its market capitalization. So one definitely to keep an eye on, and one can only hope that this doesn't mean more job losses. So that's the front page of Business Day. Looking at the Star, ANC to block corrupt leaders. Party doesn't want tainted comrades standing for public office in elections. It's going to be interesting to see how they go about this, because it's not the first time that the ANC has said this. Also, still a long road to justice for Marikana families, and we've been carrying that story in the news as well. And heartfelt farewell for ProKid, and that of course was also one of our trending topics, and it speaks about that memorial that was held in his honor yesterday, that it seems, incidentally, his parents could not attend, for they are both ill. So that's the front page of the Star. And today being a Friday, we also have the Mail and Guardian, of course, and Eskom also on their front page, economic meltdown. And they're talking about what is likely to happen when Eskom pulls the plug. And they sketch this nightmare scenario as municipalities face up to 14 hours a day in power cuts. Imagine that. And then Dlotlo, on civil servants, we have to restructure, and the minister undeterred, forging ahead there. Ramaphosa sends ministers back to the drawing board, and also talk of state spending rings hollow, and Cyril's Erdogan problem. And that's an interesting one, given what's happened to the lira, how it's tanked, and how other emerging market currencies were affected by that. You can read more about that in today's edition of the Mail and Guardian. So that's what's making headlines in the newspapers this morning.